friends, how are you? Welcome to Changing Tracks. Today we have a very special passenger. Well, he's going to present himself now, and you're going to understand why it's so special for me. Today, Daniel Murray is with us. How are you? Welcome to Changing Tracks. Hey Dan, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, so tell us a little. How old you are, where you're from, what your current situation is like.
Well, I'm 67 years old. I have 5 children, and I'm married to Laura. We've been married 31 years, and I was married once before, right out of, actually about a month out of law school I got married. And we had one child. That was in 1974 that I graduated law school and got married. And then we had a daughter in 76, and then my wife passed away in 78 of cancer, and then I didn't remarry till 85.
Okay, could you tell us a little about your infancy and your childhood? If you were part of a Catholic family, what your parents were like, that kind of environment?
Well, it was mixed. My father was Catholic. He came from a Irish-Polish family. He married my mother, who was a Swedish Protestant, and she was a Methodist. I had one sister that's older who just passed away, and we were raised Methodist, my sister and myself. It was back I was born in 1948, it was pre-Vatican II, so there was kind of division between Catholics and Protestants. I never went to the Catholic Church, really wasn't permitted in it to my knowledge. I know Catholics were not permitted, I don't believe, into Protestant churches, and we grew up in a small town, and it was divided pretty much between Protestants and Catholics. Wasn't all my friends were Catholic, actually, growing up, except I was very active in what we called the MYF, which was the Methodist Youth Fellowship, and that was more of a social thing, and a little bit of kind of topical discussions, not so much prayer or anything like that, or retreats, just mostly a social event on Sunday evenings or something. But
would you say that you had a personal relationship with God at that time?
no, I definitely did not. My mother was very devout. She went to church every Sunday, and she took my sister and I there. We went to Sunday school as young kids every week. Like I say, it wasn't really a devout thing. We just kind of went through the motions because we were supposed to be there. We were expected to be there, and we went there. I sat there with my mother. I sat there with my sister. We sang in the choir at times, the junior choir, and it was a okay thing. But as I entered my teen years, I kind of my mother had less control over me. Not that I was rebellious, but I didn't go quite as much when I was probably like a junior or senior in high school anyway.
Okay. You mentioned before that after graduating from law school, you got married. At that time, your relationship with God, what was it like? Did anything change after your daughter was born?
Well, no, it really didn't, because we got married in a church in Chicago, but again, my first wife, I don't think we ever went to church together, really. I'm trying to think. It's been 40 years, but I don't think we ever went to church, and no, we never did, ever. And we were living a life of going out a lot, and, to bars and just I don't want to say partying because we both had responsible jobs, but you know, the weekends would come. Even during the week, we went out a lot. You know, but no, God was not part of our lives. We didn't. I didn't think about God really. I don't think. And then, I'd think about it philosophically. I know I had discussions with my dad, who was Catholic and who did go to Mass. And I remember, you know, having discussions in the car with him. I don't know if that was, I think that was after 1978, after my wife had died. I remember, I have a specific memory of being in the car with him and driving, and I don't know where we were going, but you know, somehow religion came up. I probably brought it up because I like to talk about religion, and or maybe he did. I don't know, or maybe it was a feast day or something about, you know, Mary. But I just remember talking to him about that and saying, you know, how can you believe in that? And it's not, you know, that's so ridiculous. You know, I didn't say the Catholic faith is ridiculous, but to believe that, you know, you can't have a baby without, you know, sexual intercourse. I mean, you can't conceive. It's impossible. But I was thinking, you know, just of, you know, things in this world and not necessarily supernaturally or anything like that. I mean, and he never pushed it on me. He just said, well, you know, that's our faith, and you know, God can do anything, and that type of thing. And just left it at that. Never argued with me. You know, argued in trying to convince me.
What happened when your first wife died?
After my wife died, I think I felt a responsibility towards our daughter, Nicole, to give her some religion, because, let's see, she was 2 years old at that point, maybe, you know, 79, 80, she was 3 or 4 years old. I knew that she should probably be going to Sunday school and getting some faith, because that's the way I was raised. I guess I did believe in God, but it wasn't something that I ordinarily practiced, you know, my faith. And I started taking her to Sunday school. I think we went to a few different churches. I know one was a Presbyterian church downtown Chicago on Michigan Avenue. And I chose that just because it was a pretty church. I mean, I wasn't Presbyterian, but it was a very old Gothic-looking church. And we went to another church too, I forget which one. But I would take her, and then I would, a lot of times when I took her to Sunday school, I'd go to the service. And sometimes I wouldn't. I'd just drop her off and pick her up. And that was sporadic too. I mean, it wasn't like every single Sunday. It was just kind of a matter of, let's go, you know, that type of thing, convenience or whatever. And so that really kind of continued until I met my wife, Laura, which was in 1983. And then things changed a little bit.
Can you tell us a little bit about this change in your life? How exactly these things changed?
Well, she was Catholic, and it was pretty obvious. She was very strong practicing Catholic. She came from a family, or comes from a family of 11 kids, and her parents were very devout, and all her brothers and sisters were. They all would go to Mass, and it wasn't a question of anything other than, you know, Sunday you go to Mass. So when we had a very good and strong relationship right from the very beginning. It was, you know, and so we started, we spent a lot of time together, and then on Sundays I would go to Mass with her. And then a lot of times I was still going to the I think it was a Presbyterian church, and she would occasionally go there with me if I went. But again, I wasn't going there every week. I'd take Nicole there to Sunday school, and then we'd go to the service. And that was, like I say, it was infrequent, and she did it really, I think, just as kind of like a courtesy to me, because I was going to the Catholic Church with her, and she respected, I guess, my faith. This was in the first few months of our relationship. I mean, and then after a while, I think we just, if I remember correctly, I think I just quit going pretty much to the Presbyterian church, and Sundays would come and I'd go to Mass with her.
Can you explain to us when you began to believe in God and the Catholic Church?
Well, I think it was a gradual thing as far as accepting the practices, you might say, of the Catholic Church, all the liturgy and all the simple things like making the sign of a cross. I mean, that's awkward for a Protestant at first, or it was for me anyway. Just a simple sign of the cross. Protestants don't cross themselves, and it's kind of awkward at first. But after a while, it just becomes a norm, and the basic tenets are the same. I mean, as a Methodist, we used to say the Apostles' Creed every Sunday, and in a way, it was the liturgy was the same. We had the first reading, and then we would have a responsorial, just hymn, but it wasn't a hymn. I think we just said it. We said the response, and then we had, I guess it was gospel. Maybe, I don't necessarily know. I mean, it could have been just like the New Testament, letter of St. Paul or something, and very long homilies, or we didn't call them homilies, sermons, so, as far as accepting, the actual tenets of the Catholic faith, that really wasn't all that difficult, because I believed as a Christian most of those, things. I mean, the Passion, the Resurrection. I mean, that's the basis of Christianity, and believed in those things already. It was just that all the other things, that the practices, and then of course things like the Virgin Mary and the Eucharist, of course. I mean, because that's really, they say it's the source and summit of our faith, and it's really the critical thing between that and the Protestant churches. And I didn't have that faith. I couldn't accept it because it wasn't taught to me. It wasn't ingrained in me. It wasn't something that I grew up with. And then I think it's a lot to ask for someone who doesn't have that background of teaching and formation to believe that somehow this human bread turns into the body of Christ. I mean, that's a big leap of faith. That's a real big leap of faith. But then after a while, you when you read a little bit, and I'm a pretty big time reader, you read about, you just read the Bible, and it's all in there. It's all in there. As a lawyer, I like proof, and I like to see what's there. And if I read the Bible and I see, this makes sense, and it's here, then you understand it, and it makes total sense, So, that's a process.
Can you explain to us a little bit about how you changed your mind on what you thought about the Eucharist?
We were getting married in, June of '85. We've been dating for a year and a half. My wife Laura it wasn't up for debate. Our children would be raised Catholic, and as one of the tenets of the Catholic Church, that's what you promise to do when you get married, to raise your children Catholic. And I didn't have a problem with that, because my family was Catholic, and plus I had been going to Mass, and I didn't have a problem with that. I loved my wife. I wanted whatever would be best, and I thought that'd be best. She could have said that. She could have equally said, "Let's raise our kids in your faith," and I would have been fine with it. I was indifferent, really, because I hadn't made that commitment at that point to become Catholic, and my you might say change came shortly before we were married. We went through Cursillo, and as you know, Cursillo is I guess it has a Spanish history of, and I think it means short course in Christianity or something like that. But it's a movement, Spanish movement started in the United States back, I think, in the early 50s, Texas, or maybe in the 40s, where actually it was the Spanish Air Force, which was over in Texas, and they were training there, and the wives were kind of they were disheartened because their husbands really didn't have much faith. They weren't going to church, so they started this Cursillo movement where you would go on a retreat, first the men and then the women. And it was usually a 3 or 4 day retreat. So someone suggested to us that we should do this retreat before we got married. It was friends of my wife's, and you get sponsored. So I was sponsored by the husband, and she was sponsored by the woman, the wife. And so that was in April of '85. I went through the Cursillo, and she went through in May. And then, so it started on a Thursday night. You'd go there on a Thursday. It's a silent retreat. They have talks, and then you have discussions afterwards. But basically, it's outside of that. It's all silence and prayer, and you're by yourself in a room. If I remember, some people are, some people aren't. I don't remember if I was in a room by myself, but anyway, so I specifically remember, because it was getting close to the wedding, I specifically remember praying for some guidance, some guidance really as to the whole idea of the Eucharist. And so that was Thursday night, I know, and then Friday there was a little, there was a Mass in a little chapel, and there's maybe 20 of us in the Cursillo group retreating, standing around, and during the consecration, I felt this, I was kind of in the back of this group, and I felt I felt the presence of someone. And it's the same sense where you're standing in a room, maybe with a group of people, and you don't have eyes in the back of your head, but you feel like someone's maybe behind you or staring at you, or you just feel the presence of someone entering the room. You haven't heard them, but it's what I call a sixth sense. And you turn around, and sure enough, there's someone there. How did you know that? And that's the feeling that I felt during the consecration. I felt the presence of someone behind me that could actually touch me. They were that close. And I felt a warmth. I mean, a physical warmth. Now, later on, I didn't think about it, but it was like maybe a day or two later, Saturday night or Sunday, I thought, wait a minute. It was profound. The feeling, the warmth, everything. I said, this is Jesus who's here. I felt him. I felt his warmth. Well, I was told later by one of my wife's sisters, we call her Aunt Cynthia. She said that many times, or maybe it was my wife, I think it was Aunt Cynthia. She said many times when you are, I don't want to say overcome by the Holy Spirit, but the Holy Spirit touches you spiritually, you feel the warmth in your body, actual heat, and I felt that. And when I, of course, I didn't know that at the time, But then I put two and two together and I said, wait a minute, this is weird. I'm praying about this, and then during the Eucharist, the consecration, I feel this warmth, I feel this person behind me. I look, there's no one there, but it was that real. And at that point I knew. It was like instantaneous. God had answered my prayer. This is it. And I came out of there on Sunday, and I remember telling, Laura, I'm turning Catholic. Because that was the only thing that was holding me back. I had told her I wasn't going to become Catholic just to become Catholic and have a happy marriage, because it would have been false. And as I told you before, I had the basic foundation of the church. I was Christian, the Apostles' Creed, the resurrection, the passion, all this stuff. I believed in it. I didn't practice it. I believed in it. And but that was the hurdle. That was the hurdle. And then the smaller things like the Virgin Mary and all that other stuff came together later. Not that I didn't believe, well, you believed in it, but it just didn't have the devotion in the Protestant church. And, the more you learned about Mary and read about her and her life and just studied it, then faith comes with that.
Dan, what would you say to those Catholics or those Protestants as well who don't advance in their faith, or those Catholics who find it difficult to believe in the Eucharist, that still haven't taken like that step, a little like what you were saying, yeah, I'm a Christian in that kind of way, but what would you say to them? What message do you have for them?
Well, there's one answer for that, and that's prayer. You have to pray for these things. You have to pray for, enlightenment, guidance, and you have to do a little bit on your own too, besides prayer. You have to read. You have to, Holy Scripture. That's why it's there. It's there to teach us. I can't think of another reason why God gave it to us. And and for myself anyway, again, I'm very apologetic, and I like to have answers, and I like to have proofs. So I always did a lot of research on things that I might have questions about, and I would encourage Protestants and Catholics that have some doubt as to, talk to their priest. Say, hey, I'm having a trouble with this, or a Catholic friend. Say, I'm having some trouble. Do you have a book you can recommend it? I have a great book. I read it and read it and read it. It's called The Biblical Basis of the Eucharist. I have 2 or 3 copies of it. It's a wonderful book.
Who is the author?
I think it was D'Souza, I'm not sure. But it's called The Biblical Basis of the Eucharist. And the neat thing about it is that it just lays it out, 1, 2, 3. It's not a really long book. It's something that you got to read over and over sometimes for it to sink in and to understand it. But it just talks about the real presence. It talks about the eternal sacrifice. It's a beautiful book. And it's a book that just lays it out, period. And you can't argue with it. It's all there. I would recommend that book, The Biblical Basis of the Eucharist, because that's usually, I'm going to say, it's got to be the biggest stumbling block that's really the separation between Protestants and Catholics when you think about it, is the Eucharist.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Dan. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, friends, let's see. Lukewarmness. Every once in a while, we are all invaded by it. At times, we can be lukewarm Christians who forget about God, like Dan did, until he finally said to Laura, I'm going to be a Catholic with everything that comes with that. Let's not be simply traditional Christians. I know we aren't going to be converted all of a sudden. It's a process. We are all on the path towards conversion, but ask for help. If we can't do it alone, ask for help. Ask for help to maintain yourself, to make an effort, to believe more in our Catholic faith. Ask for help in our community, in our parish, a priest or a friend. Surely someone will be there. But please, let's not be lukewarm, including myself. Friends, thank you. Thank you for being there.